Okay, I think it's working. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the origin of life. What is life? Can we have life without DNA? That's the big question today. That's one of the responses that I had in one of my previous videos when I said, what is life? And people have all sorts of responses to that. And I think it's a really interesting topic as to what happens, people's reactions when you even ask, what is the definition of life? How and why are we here? How did we get here? And are we alone in the universe? And so this whole setup is dedicated to that very question. And today we have actual real answers. We can now show and explain and experiment on how we go from we are all made of stardust, right? Carl Sagan, to organized structures that maintain themselves, thereby always increasing the entropy of their surroundings. And so we have real answers today, and I'm very excited. I wrote a whole book about it, actually. I'll put it right here, The Symphony of Entropy. And it's about how naturally disorganized systems go from disorder to order, which seems like going against the grain because, as we know, everything goes from order to disorder, and yet here we are. And so for the longest time, the answer is, well, it's divine intervention, we're special, we're the center of the universe, and that's how and why we're here, because, well, we didn't have a better answer. And I like to use the analogy of Galileo and how at the time, of course, if we look from planet Earth, we were a flat Earth, and we're looking out into the heavens and everything's around us. But as science catches up with those notions and belief systems, we have to adapt, and there's an evolution to it. So I'm very excited another interesting question I was asked is, how do you keep up your motivation and enthusiasm on this topic when nobody's watching? You're having a live show right now and nobody's watching. And a couple of answers to that. One of them is, we're sitting on the mother lode. We have answers today, and I think it's fascinating. It's the most interesting puzzle ever as to how and why we're here, and yet it seems like for a lot of people, when the topic comes up, they might be a little bit irritated or annoyed, or why are we bringing this up? Don't we already have answers to this? And there's only a handful of people that I know about that are actually devoted, dedicated, passionate about the topic of how and why we're here and are we alone. And so I think it's fascinating. For me, this is good practice on bettering this channel and working on my future TED Talk, let's say, or my Netflix special. And let's see if we have somebody here. We have Ted Bremer. Hello. Hello again. I think he's my one friend here. And that's great. Again, there's no shame in that. We have to start somewhere. And imagine if we could go back and see Darwin, Mendel, Einstein. I guess I shouldn't be comparing myself like that. But imagine if we had access to their workshop when they were passionate about a science that nobody else knew about. Feel free to ask any questions if you have them. And so here we are. Oh, and so one answer we had this week was on what is life. So many people have different answers, but a lot of the time we talk about how it has to be DNA based, right? Without life, it's not, without DNA, it's not life, right? And while there are some exceptions to that, and for example, a virus, not just computer, but like a human virus, would that be considered a life? It does replicate itself, it does adapt, but is it really living? That's debatable. And of course, we've got our mascot here, and I can do this because it's just me and Ted doing this show. And I really enjoy, too, cutting up these live shows and make like clips or shorts for the rest of the week. This setup is made such that all of the cameras are on at the same time, even though you guys only see one at a time. And so when I go back to edit, I can kind of fine-tune with the camera. So it's absolutely an amazing system, I think. And let's say hello to our favorite mascot here, Nebula. 2, 1. Ooh, we've got a question. Hold on. Hello, Nebula. Yeah, she's amazing. She's the reason we get most of our subscribers. Not that I care too much about subscribers. Again, this is about a passion, about what are we doing. Oh, the message was retracted. I really wanted to see it. Oh, well. All right. Well, and we've got some new toys for you today. Let's go to the wall. So why are we so happy about the origin of life? It has to do more actually with the origin of life, but really understanding our surroundings and our place in the universe. Check out this little guy over here. So I'm expanding this model at the atomizer. And this is supposed to show how we go from disorder to order. And so I put together this marble system. And let's see if it works. See if we can get this to work. So ultimately, this will get us to a place where I can actually bring this to life from the disorder of the atoms. And so I had a lot of fun putting this together. And why don't we do the demonstration of the atomizer right now? And I'll press this. Sorry about that. Boy, I am off today. So what we did, that's interesting. Okay, so we added a few elements. If you saw there's some mousetraps there, and there's going to be a lot more mousetraps. And that is to show how with the optimally dissipative configuration, we always have, well, the optimally dissipative configuration. In other words, things are going in craziness and randomness with all these balls that have different magnets on them. And every time we do this, we get a completely different outcome. And that's because they all started at a different place. And even though it seems very random what we do with these, it's very precise how they actually move. And it isn't predetermined. But the final outcome is always the most ordered structure that it can get to. That's very important. So if there's any magnification to be done between each, and this is where the phenomenon of order happens, because the configuration that they end up at is the one that's most dissipative or irreversible. Irreversible means that it's less likely to reverse itself. And so it's the final structure which is dissipated more. And this is where we would have structures go boom, 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 and finally get to a place that if it's self-sustaining, it can replicate. Of course, this is a model of, for example, there would be millions and millions of molecules and atoms on the head of a pin. Let's see if this camera catches me. And so there would be almost an infinite amount of trillions and trillions of these sized models on any planet from the sky to the depths of the ocean for hundreds and millions of years doing this craziness. And if it can, if there is a potential to disperse energy, that's the configuration that the randomness will gravitate towards. And this is why I do these videos, because I should over time get better at explaining this. If you have any questions, bring them up. I also messed something else up, and that's where, it's so funny, the whole iPad was at 0% power, so I can't go around and look at, okay, here we go. I'm back at the computer. Here I am, but very skeptical. Let's talk about that. Sorry, argument by analogy. All right, no, I'm with you. So many people see life as only human. There are so many scientific discoveries to show life exists off planet as well. We see this on Mars now. Do you think there was or is life on Mars? Well, I don't know if, first of all, I love the question. I will begin by saying that something very controversial, possibly, that life isn't an actual thing. So there are many complex systems out there, from hurricanes to snowflakes to us, and that's why I call them all optimally dissipative configurations. We're one example of a complex structure that exists. The fact that we call it life is arbitrary. It's what us humans feel that the right definition would be, because we need to define things. Nothing wrong with that. However, it would be like, let's say you have a fire going, or you watch clouds in the sky. And if you were to pause that fire or pause that fire in the sky, nice. If you were to pause that fire or pause that cloud in the sky, that would be us right now, a very specific configuration that exists that would never again be replicated or duplicated or reproduced, because it is just what it is, and it's going to continue its optimally dissipative configuration as it goes on. And similarly, when we try to recreate, let's say, what we call life on Earth, it would be like trying to reproduce that exact flame or that exact cloud that we see in the sky. Of course, that's impossible, because there's so many infinite numbers of trillions of things happening for that to happen, that this is what we are. But it's so difficult for humans to objectively try to see what they are without putting ourselves at the center when we create our stories. And that's the key to understanding how and why and what are we and how we are, why are we here. It's not reading more books or understanding more biology or physics. The main obstacle is going to be trying to remove ourselves from that equation, because we can't help but put ourselves at the center of it. Let me know if you agree with that. Now, if we go back to does life have to have DNA? Again, that's our definition. And if we stick to the definition that life has to have DNA, then indeed we are alone in this universe, because guess what? DNA is extremely organized structure. It would be like pausing on the clouds or the fire that we see and saying, I want to reproduce that, and that's DNA, and that's, somebody's trying to tell me something. And that's one of the keys that we're going to have to get to, is that DNA, unless it was seeded here, unless it's common and it came through like an asteroid, then sure, maybe it's all over the place. But if the DNA evolved here, as we think, on Earth, it was a very, very specific thing that could not ever be reproduced again. The bright side of this is that the reason we think DNA is so important is because, well, it's how we replicate, it's the blueprint of what we are, right? Well, guess what? Maybe there's infinite other ways to be the blueprint or to reproduce ourselves that have nothing to do with DNA. So that's the answer to that. I would say, of course, it would be life if some other critter or some other thing that's non-DNA based was out there on a different planet. Of course, that would be life, but we're not ready for that yet because we seem to be stuck on this notion that life is an absolute thing, which it isn't. And people might say, well, what about consciousness? What about the fact that we can actually look back at ourselves and see ourselves in the... That's great. I'm not making it any less important of what we are and where we came from. But the point is that we are not the center of the universe. And that's going to be the hardest thing to get through. Once we get past that, life is everywhere. I tell you what, I saw a documentary on Venus not too long ago. And I saw all of these beautiful complex structures, including volcanoes and hurricanes and acid rain. And I'll be the first, and we're going to start moving around the studio here, to say that, for example, the water cycle, the carbon cycle, we could call those life forms. Here's a thought experiment for you. Let's say you have a team of people. Let's say you have a soccer team, football team, a lacrosse team. When those humans get together, they have a common goal and they become like one. So I could say that that is a life form. That group of humans is a life form, much like a beehive would be many bees forming like one unit. Similarly, if you have a team at work, there's a common goal. If you look at humans and cultures evolving, those could be considered life forms because they're a life of their own. And a good thought experiment to do if we're wondering when does life start or end is at what point does that soccer team, that football team, that lacrosse team, at what point when the humans disperse, is it no longer a soccer team, a football team? So we're expanding our minds to understand that we, as amazing and complicated, intricate as we are a very specific thing. It's not an inherent thing. So when we say life, my first question to you is, well, what do we mean by that? And are we open to other forms of life that aren't exactly like us? Because then we would be alone if we made the... Can you believe what's going on here with this kitten? Can you believe this? We are alive. What are you doing? We're alive. I'm trying to explain to people the origin of life and are we alone? And you're making it all about you. That's a bad kitty. Let me check if there's any questions. Sorry, argument by analogy. Well, I'll take that. Next week, didn't like it. Okay, good point. Maybe it is sentient that defines life, but our weather system is very complex ODC. Whoa, this guy's using my language. He says, our weather system is a very complex ODC, meaning optimally dissipative configuration, which I unveiled in my book, The Symphony of Entropy. You could say I wrote the book on it. And it's actually based on my favorite guy's biophysicist, Jeremy England, and we're going to talk about him in a second, who recently talked about how life is actually inevitable, and it's as inevitable as rocks rolling down a hill. And that actually opened up my mind to whoa, that sounds like a great puzzle. You're telling me that life was inevitable and that it came perfectly naturally. I used to think that it seems like a lot of work to have a complex system emerge out of randomness, like a lot of struggle. But today I can see that, much like you see a fire burning or the clouds going in the sky, that it is beautiful, it is very complex, it is unpredictable, it is chaotic, and that's exactly how we are. And I love it. I'm going to do this for a long, long time. I only know about a handful of people that are really interested in this. And Larry Graham, hello, thanks for joining. Panspermia, love it. I talk about panspermia in my book. This is from Ted Bremer. And that's where the theory is that we were seeded here. That's where, like an asteroid, or, well, actually there's different panspermias. One is where we purposefully were seeded here, which is fun science fiction, and maybe if that's it, but there's no real evidence of that. The other one, though, is if, like, our building blocks or the most basic life form, like the LUCA, our oldest ancestor, or DNA, if that was seeded here, panspermia, then indeed we would evolve from that, and we would be related from that to that other thing that sent us here. That doesn't seem likely, but we're open to it. And the key there with panspermia is that what I'm saying here today applies to whatever is happening on other planets in other galaxies and solar systems within our galaxy. And that's the key. When we try to figure out the truth about something, we ask ourselves, would it apply in a foreign planet? And when I wrote my book, The Symphony of Entropy, available at Amazon, I made sure that whatever I come up with would apply. Like aliens would look at us and be like, that's right, this guy's got it. However, if we stick to our, let's say, belief systems that emerge and evolve naturally as a result of, well, it turns out that the group of people with the best belief system, the strongest one, is the one that is more optimally dissipative. In other words, they're better able to reproduce and organize and set up structures such that they're most able to reproduce. So that's why we have the current religions and belief systems that we have today. There are infinite other belief systems and religions that emerged. However, they weren't as strong as the others. The point there is that if an alien came to this planet, or if we went to another planet and they had their own belief systems and religions, let's say if they're still at that stage in their evolution, then the only similarity that we would have would be math and science. It wouldn't be their belief systems, because the belief systems emerge from humans, and they're usually human-centered. So we don't come up with belief systems that have nothing to do with us, and that's going to be one of the greatest barriers that we have if we want to find out the truth about the origin of life and what life is. Panspermia. Ted Bremer, interestingly, researchers have found all nucleobases needed to make DNA and RNA in meteorites. Nice. Kind of backs up your notion of alternate to DNA life forms. Sweet. I like that most of all because it shows that we're open to the fact that we're not the center of the universe, and that's going to be the first step if we try to get a real understanding of what we are and what we're doing here. And I'm telling you, the freedom and joy and open-mindedness and being able to look around this room or the world and to see how things work, because those things work in the same exact way that we evolve with ODC, optimally dissipative configuration. Let's go to the wall. So some of you maybe haven't seen this new contraption. So I added mouse traps and this life-looking thing here, and it's again made to look like our oldest living ancestor, the Luca. I can't think of it now. Somebody out there will be able to get me the acronym, but we can go back billions of years, I think 3.2 billion years, on this planet where the first life form that we know of, but it was very, very complex. And this little guy here is meant to kind of like simulate that it is indeed complex. So how does this come to be? And so I set up other things that when these balls bounce around, they're gonna kind of create different things happening, and I'm having a lot of fun with it. Let's go to the fire pit. See if better yet, let's go to the holodeck, because I've got some new videos prepared for you. Oh, speaking of fires, so I was just talking about how fire is a great analogy to life, and whoa, what was that? And how and why we're here. And I look at a fire and I see the smoke, I see the flames. Oh, can I go one frame? I can. Isn't this fun? Oop, you can't see me now though. I wonder why. Here I am. That was weird. Let's go back here. And so, yep, this is why I put this together. That is so similar to how and why we're here, because first of all, you start with a log, right? And that's just has a lot of potential energy, and it's the remnant of, it's a skeleton of an old living organism, but it has potential energy. And under the right conditions, it's going to burn, and it's going to have a cycle. That's, again, it's much like you could almost call it a life form, because if you were to pause it now, it just looks normal, it just looks like a fire. But if we were able to pause the exact configuration that we see here, and it's so complex and it's so beautiful, and if time stopped like this, because, and let's say the fire had a personality and a conscience, it'd be like, wow, we're amazing, look at us. You've got this thing over here, this thing over here, and indeed, you would never be able to replicate this exactly, and maybe that fire would want to call itself, or no, not the fire itself, but the flame, it's so intricate and precise that it would want to call itself a name maybe. And I'm here to introduce to you the idea that while it is irreproducible, it is very specific and intricate, it wasn't meant to look exactly like that. That's just how all the energies got together to form that exact structure at that moment. But guess what? In 20 minutes, that'll be a pile of ashes. 20 minutes ago, it was sitting on a pile of wood. Another example of this phenomenon is if we look at clouds. So similarly, we can see amazing intricate structures up there that will never again be exactly the same. And the reason that they look like that now is because infinite factors made it that way. And the reason it looks like that now is the optimally dissipative configuration. And it doesn't take away from the absolute beauty that it is. Let's go back to the desk and check if there's any. Oh my God. I cannot believe what is happening here right now. This is why it's glitching. Okay, anybody else? Interestingly, nope. Ediacarians, I'm not sure. Please elaborate. I don't know what that means. But if you could see my cat right now, this is crazy. This is crazy. She's sitting on the panel, and that's why it was glitching. You're so bad. That is a bad kitty. That is a bad kitty. But that's adorable. So, anything else that we want to talk about? We're coming up at the 28-minute mark. I'm happy that it still worked. I touched on Jeremy England. Let's see. Okay, this is our man right here. He is our Michael Jordan. This is Jeremy England, and it changed my life when I was Googling again, like what is the origin of life or whatever, and then now we have an actual physicist he's respected, he's for real, he wrote a book that I'm reading also, and he actually came up with adaptive dissipative adaptation, which is kind of like what I wrote about, and he's the one who came up with life should be as unsurprising as rocks rolling down a hill, and that just got my brain going as to what does he mean by that, and let me try to solve that puzzle. So, are we understanding out there that the reason anything complex structure exists is because as a result of it becoming like that, it dispersed something else out there? And so let's go to the board and do a little spiel with that. You are crazy, cat. That is crazy. Let's do a little spiel over here. What I have is, okay, so you've got our two planets here, one with a human or life, one without. Wow. I'll do that. This is why I get paid the big bucks. All right. We will never find a complex structure or system where the output of entropy didn't increase. I don't know if that came through, but the idea is that things are not being here. Here we've got our famous Boeing 747, which is my original thought experiment that I talk about in my book. When I was young, I heard that here's the proof for, let's say, God or divine intervention is because if you had all of the parts of a Boeing 747 and a tornado ran through it, there's no way that you would end up with an actual Boeing 747 afterwards. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. That's because a human, an intelligent being, had to put all those parts together. Like, yeah, that makes sense. And so the analogy is, oh, well, we are also very complex and intricate and amazing, and so what created us? And this is where the answer, the easy answer is, of course, God. But I'm not quite satisfied with that because, well, actually it depends on what you call God. So somebody could say that God is the power of the universe. It could be entropy. It could be, but usually it's a human-centered type of thing. But I guess that's where we're mangling words around, because if we zoom out the camera and not make us the center of the universe, we will see that the Boeing 747 and everything around us, I said, and everything around us, God created because somehow it benefited the human's survival, the human's reproduction, the human's reason to be here. And that helps the entropy of the universe because the human being here is extremely dissipative. So think about all the energy we use, all the fuel we use, and that's another reason this whole talk might be controversial, because at the end of the day, the reason that we're here is because we're heating up the planet, because that's the result of entropy. That's what happens. And that's not a popular thing to say, because there's an inherent controversy there about humans and the ecosystem and all that stuff. I get a lot more deeply into it in my book, The Symphony of Entropy, available at Amazon. And I've got some more formulas here, but one of the main ones is going to be, let's not do it because I want to go to the fire pit real quick. So we're going to make our way back and see if there's any more questions, and then we'll call it a day. I'm having a lot of fun with this, and I send little shorts and clips throughout the week, and I like to acknowledge whoever's interested enough to watch this. And I also play around with the lights and the lighting, and I'm not a professional yet, but maybe someday I will. And I don't know how this looks here. Oh, there's no fire. So see if this works better than last week. Let me know if you have any comments below. And we're going to quickly do a Mezzadine Galileo moment. So today, most people agree that the planet Earth is one of many planets in our solar system. But at one point, of course, we knew that we were the center not only of the solar system but of the universe. And this is kind of like where we are now with the origin of life, because you come up with somebody about the origin of life, and they're kind of maybe annoyed or bothered, or why are we bringing this up? You know, back in Galileo time, it would be, we know that why are you bothering the fact that the Earth is the center of the solar system or the universe, or that it's not flat even? What benefit could that possibly have for us to even look into your notion when we're perfectly happy here with our center of the world, Earth? So obviously there's a lot of benefits to expanding our knowledge and science, and Galileo is one of the fathers of modern physics and science, and And I'm already experiencing the benefits of understanding how and why we're here by just walking around kind of happy and understanding that everything is for a reason the way that it is, and having a real strong connection to the universe. And I get on my knees, I pray to God, and I talk to it or whoever or whatever it is in the same way that I talk to myself or to my cat sometimes. It doesn't make me a bad person or a hypocrite, the fact that I do that. And I don't know why it's going down there. So I don't see any inherent contradiction between either believing in a God, since we can define what God is anyway ourselves, and everybody on the planet has a different notion of what that is, but also that it actually opens up a lot of positive possibilities to be able to expand our point of view on what life and the origin of it is. So we're going to go back for our final closing out at the desk. I appreciate everybody who joined, and I appreciate your feedback. Larry Graham, thank you. Yep, I'm working on it, and I'm dedicating pretty much everything to this topic that we're dealing with here. And hopefully if I can make it a nice environment to look at while I'm presenting and having nice models, that people will be interested in looking at it. I do look at your comments and I appreciate them, and throughout the week that's one of my goals for this channel. I don't talk about how many subscribers or my popularity in that sense. My goal is to get better at speaking like I did today, and I think each week I get a little bit better. And also practicing for maybe my TED Talk or my future Netflix special. We're sitting on a huge thing here with being able to openly and happily talk about what we are really, like objectively and absolutely, is we're on the verge of a new revolution, I think, and it's going to be huge, and I'm just thrilled to be a part of it. And so we'll see you guys later. Thanks for having me, and we'll see you next time on The Origin of Life.